Max Scherzer goes out and talks to the media the other day, talking about how and why he wants to play for this Toronto Blue Jays organization.
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jays. Thank you for making Locked On Blue Jays your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. As always, I'm Braden Iwasco. He's Carter First. You can find us on Twitter, Braden5Iwasco, Carter First too, as well on Instagram and TikTok at Locked On Blue Jays. If you're new here to YouTube or you're listening anywhere else, make sure you hit that subscribe button on the YouTube page so you guys can be notified of any live streams, shorts, podcast, videos, sort of whatever comes out from us over this upcoming 2025 season. So again, hit that subscribe button. It really does make a difference. As well, Discord link is down in the description. You guys can click that, join the Discord, talk Blue Jays with us whenever you want. A lot to get into today. Max Scherzer had some comments. We're going to get into that. Talk about the starting rotation a little bit. What's the depth look like? We know Scherzer's had injury troubles. You're bound to have an injury at some point throughout the season. What can this starting five look like moving, through the season? As well, franchise rankings for the 2020s have come out. We're going to get into all of that, break down where the Toronto Blue Jays landed, maybe why they landed there as well. But to start off with everything, Carter, Ross Atkins had a couple things to say just about their offseason, what their plan is moving forward. And this is the quote from Ross Atkins. I think there's a way to upgrade any aspect. At this point, it would require a trade for us and for this team. Then he says, doesn't have to, but most likely would be the case. So I think that's something that me and you sort of both clued into a little bit ago when, the talks with Pete Alonso started to fizzle out. And then also we really haven't heard a ton on Bregman. I mean, that's still in the cards, but the deal's not looking like it's imminent. We did our trade episode because this was probably going to be the case.
Yeah, when we look at a guy like Alex Bregman, I was in on him earlier this offseason, but then I heard he wanted a 6 to 7 year contract. That's not something I want with Alex Bregman. It's not going to age well. And since obviously those cheating years on with the Houston Astros, he has been significantly worse. Was a 9-8 WAR player. Ever since then, has gotten to around 4, like half as good of production as we've seen from Alex Bregman. Still a very good baseball player, still a very good defender. But I think you start marching into some trouble once you get to that 6th, 7th year if you're looking at an Alex Bregman deal. And that's kind of what we thought. We thought that the big signings would be done. As you said, the Pete Alonso talks peaked at one point, thought he might be a Toronto Blue Jay, and then obviously it fizzled out. Like you said, you could tell that Steve Kona and Pete Alonso wanted to reunite. You thought that they were going to be able to reach a contract. It was kind of in the cards. Pete Alonso wanted to be a Met once again. And we did do our trade episode. We did that just obviously through some prospects at the wall, players that we would like to see come to the Toronto Blue Jays. But realistically, I think if there is a trade for the Toronto Blue Jays, it's not going to be this huge blockbuster trade. It's not going to be getting one of these massive players, massive superstars from the San Diego Padres. If anything, it's going to be a couple prospects mid to lower end dumping off, maybe getting another bullpen piece, maybe getting a power hit batter, maybe a guy that can play that DH position where you go all out on that hitting aspect, not really focused on the defense right now because the DH is a little bit up in the air right now. So it makes a lot of sense that Ross Atkins came out and said this, but I think all the big moves of this offseason are probably done at this point in February.
Yeah, and we had some fun. We looked at some guys that are options, obviously, within, in the league and who it could come to the Blue Jays, but I 100% agree with you. I think this is going to be a very small move. I would say it's probably not even going to be a move that looks like the signing of Justin Turner or Brandon Belt or whoever it might be. I think it's going to be even less than that. It would just be a quick addition piece for this team. I said this a while ago, Carter. I'm okay with what the team looks like now. Yes, there are still some holes, but there's holes on any baseball team. And I guess this sort of moves us right into talking about Max Scherzer's comments with the pitching staff. The pitching staff looks really good to start the year. And as much as some people don't like the signing of Max Scherzer, that is what it is. The guy is there to be a fifth starter for your team to eat innings, and you needed a guy with Alek Manoah being away or with injury. you needed somebody to come in and fill that role at least until he gets back. And if that can be Max Scherzer, great. And if he does amazingly, great. If he does poorly, well, it's a 1-year deal. What's the worst that's going to happen? But he did go into some comments, Carter. I'll send it off to you for to start things off with those.
Yeah, with Max Scherzer, I've seen a bunch of different starting rotation mocks where obviously it's Kevin Gausman, Jose Berrios at the top, but I've seen Max Scherzer at 3, I've seen Max Scherzer at 4, I've seen Max Scherzer at 5. Does a starting rotation into the season really matter when guys are going? They're all going to have equal starts. You're going to have that 5-man rotation. They're all going to rotate in and out. Yes, maybe you want your best guy to match up against another team's ace, but in the big picture, does it really matter if they're going as their third starter, if you're going as their fourth starter? Playoffs are obviously different. They're going to have to make a decision at that point with Max Scherzer and his tenure. Obviously, the veteran presence maybe is a little bit more built for these situations. Obviously, with the 2 World Series, 3 Cy Youngs, it's a very good pitcher. He's been a very good pitcher for his entire career. The big question, obviously, is that can he still be that pitcher? Does he still have anything left in the tank? And that's something that we're going to have to find out. But Max Scherzer, along with Pete Alonso, kind of thought it was this package deal, saying Max Scherzer was only going to sign if the Toronto Blue Jays got this extra power bat. That was not the case. They did not need that extra power bat. Anthony Santander was enough. Jeff Hoffman was enough. Andrus, Jimenez, those type of guys were enough for Max Scherzer to pull the trigger on the Toronto Blue Jays. And he came in with a quote that said, "I'm not just playing to play, I'm playing to win." And I feel like the Toronto Blue Jays offered that. He kind of continues to go into this all-in approach and this aggressive free agency that Ross Atkins did have. You could tell that there was a winning mentality within the Toronto Blue Jays. Max Scherzer obviously saw that, and I think that's why he landed with the Blue Jays as his destination.
Yeah, I mean, to any free agent, they want to know that the team that they're going to has a chance, or most guys. I mean, there are some guys that, signed with the Athletics, and I think you can't know that you're going to win a World Series with that squad. But for most players, they want to go to where the winning is and want to bring a winning mentality, an organization that has that in mind, that is willing to go all in to win championships, to make the playoffs. And did the Blue Jays build an absolute championship winning roster? Probably not, but they did pretty well. And I think when we look at the entirety of the offseason, we can see that the Toronto Blue Jays front office management did a very good job of getting free agents to sign here. And that was enough for Max Scherzer to come. Again, like it or hate it, you guys can have your opinions on that. It did the job of attracting more players. That's why Anthony Santander came. They saw the direction this organization was going.
Well, when you look at the positioning that they were in this offseason compared to last offseason, obviously last offseason, massive fail. But again, you look at some of the free agents, you look at the production that they did have in 2024. Not a lot of them did produce at a high level. You had your Jock Peterson, you had your Tommy Pham, obviously the major end guys like the Teoscar Hernandez. That's probably a guy that you did miss out on. Obviously, there's the Blake Snell aspect of it. The Toronto Blue Jays never really going to be on Blake Snell. The links to them just were non-existent. But when you look at it from the position, just off, you made the playoffs in 2023. Obviously, the better trajectory. You didn't think 2024 was necessarily going to happen. You didn't think Bo Bichette would be that Bo Bichette we saw in 2024. George Springer taking that step back. A lot of the Toronto Blue Jays players performing under expectation, which obviously is not going to be a recipe for success. And when you go into this offseason, when you had 74 wins, it was kind of tough to sell that winning mentality. It was tough to sell that there was going to be a bright future in Toronto Blue Jays land because you had so many down years with a roster that, again, was getting towards the end of their contract. So much uncertainty with Kevin Gausman coming to the end of his contract. Obviously, the Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Bo Bichette stuff that we talk about all the time. But continuing on with Max Scherzer, clearly he does believe on this winning mentality and this team's ability to at least make the playoffs and hopefully make some sort of playoff run that we haven't really seen under the Ross Atkins era whatsoever. But he continues on and says his goal is to win the World Series. That's it. He loves winning. Winning cures everything. That's all you need to do is wake up in the morning, have that drive to win, and the rest takes care of itself. I can still feel like I can pitch at a high level. I can still compete at a high level and be part of a championship caliber team. For me, that's so much fun. I kind of put all the accolades and that kind of stuff in the rearview mirror and just focus on what more can I do this year and continue to win.
Yeah, I mean, that's the Max Scherzer mindset that we all know he was going to bring to the diamond, right? The guy is an absolute beast when it comes to I hate using this quote, but I think I used it with you yesterday, Carter. Hating to lose. Max Scherzer is a guy, he likes to win, but I think more than anything, Max Scherzer hates to lose. And that shows in his play. He gets mad, he gets frustrated. You can see the emotion on the mound. Excuse me. And yeah, what he brings to the organization, I don't know. I don't know if he is the piece that, puts this team over the top. I don't think he is that. As good as and healthy, as great as he's feeling, at 40 years old, you still got to think there might be some injury problems. There might be regression, all of this coming into it. But if he feels good and he gets a chance to have a full spring training moving into the season with full ramp up, that is putting Max Scherzer in the best possible position to succeed this year. If he was going to come in and have a half spring training or an injury problem within spring training, then I would almost be okay. This guy might be done. But if he is getting that full ramp up, it makes you believe a little bit that he's still got the juices to be a successful pitcher in the major leagues.
Yeah, those are the two vices that people have with this signing, is that it's the age to see if anything left in the tank. And I think that's kind of the secondary reason. The main reason is he's coming off of an injury. He was a 39-year-old, now 40 years old, that only pitched 43 and a third innings last season. If you're signing him at that $15.5 million clip and he's not going to pitch for your team, that's not necessarily something that you're going to be too happy about. But with the offseason that he has had, with the full rehab that he has had, he actually had a quote on this as well that I'll go into. He said that he's had a very good offseason, ramping up as usual, and he's ready to arrive at the spring training facility full tilt. But whether that makes a difference this year, again, remains to be seen. He says, I'm not going to sit here and look at this year like I didn't work hard. No, I worked plenty hard to put myself in a position. I just didn't have the health to back it up. So clearly Max Scherzer's betting on himself. Obviously, he wouldn't come to the Toronto Blue Jays, like I said, if he didn't think they'd be able to win. He's a guy that has, again, you look at the tenure, you can look at all the stats, you can look at all the accolades. He's not really focused on that. I don't think we should necessarily focus on that either, because is Max Scherzer the same pitcher that he was in 2015? Absolutely not. You cannot go out and say that. But like you said, when you have a starting rotation like Kevin Gausman, Jose Berrios, right now, again, you can throw Max Scherzer, Chris Bassitt, or Bowden Francis kind of all in those 3 to 5 positions. But if you can get to that August, if you can get to that time where Alek Manoah is back, maybe you see Ricky T, there's some options down the line that you could use as well if there is some injuries throughout the season. Nobody is expecting Max Scherzer to have over 30 starts. If you can be between 20 and 25, I think that is a very good signing for the Toronto Blue Jays. Kind of get them to that point where they can be competitive and actually not buy at the trade deadline, not sell at the trade deadline like we saw last season. And then the playoff aspirations as well. Maybe this is a guy, especially with all experience that he does have, even if he goes 4 innings in a wild card game, an ALDS game, that is something that can be very beneficial to the Toronto Blue Jays. It kind of takes some of the pressure off of some of these younger starting pitchers that would have had to go in that role if we didn't have this Max Scherzer signing.
Yeah, Carter, I agree with you. I think this is when you look towards the playoffs. Obviously, you have to think about the playoffs because that's where everybody wants to be. And so, what does Max Scherzer bring to a playoff team instead of a team that wouldn't? Well, Max Scherzer, it will take over for some of those young guys. I don't know how comfortable the Toronto Blue Jays would be with having to pitch Bowden Francis or Yariel Rodriguez in a playoff scenario. So you bring in a guy like Max Scherzer that's done it before, been there plenty. It does make sense. And will he get a playoff start again? Who knows, right? We don't even know if the Toronto Blue Jays are going to make the playoffs. We don't know if Max Scherzer is going to be healthy or have a good season. But in the back of your head, it's a bonus when you make a signing like that. You know a guy has done all of it before. It eases your mind a little bit going into the playoffs. Even if he comes out in a bullpen role event, like at some point, it's a possibility. He's got that tenure. Saying that, Carter, we got a lot more to get into covering Max Scherzer, covering the starting pitching before we get into in the third segment a franchise rankings list that was released. So we'll get into all that and more right when we come back. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on the fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for bigger payouts, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. Love the live game parlays. They're so much fun because I can see who's doing well and who's not doing well, and I can place my bets. It gives me a little bit of safe betting, I guess. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So, Carter, just continuing on with Max Scherzer here. I guess, where do we continue with Max Scherzer? We know that he will come in and say what you will. If he is a third, fourth, fifth starter, we've had those, conversations. To me, he has to be a fifth starter. He has to be that guy because you don't know what he's going to bring to the table. He could be the third starter. He could be the fourth starter, but I think you have to have it in your mind that he is there to eat some innings, at least until Alek Manoah gets back, or if, Bowden Francis falls off the face of the earth. We don't know what he's going to bring either. So those two guys I have question marks around still. For you, is that where Max Scherzer sort of fits in? Is that fifth role right now?
For me, like I'm high on Bowden Francis. Again, I don't really care about the third, like putting a number on it, like a third, fourth, or fifth guy. For me, that doesn't really matter whatsoever because these guys are all going to go out and they're all going to have to eat innings. They're all going to have to start games. So whether you start the season against the Baltimore Orioles with Max Scherzer or you default that back to the Washington Nationals and you want him to go against his former team, maybe that would be a nice storyline as well. For me, I'm not really reading too much into this. Like, oh, he's the third guy right now. He's the fourth guy right now. He's the fifth guy right now. For all I care, Max Scherzer could lead off in the opening day. Again, wouldn't necessarily want that, but does it really matter in the big picture if it's Max Scherzer, if it's Kevin Gausman, if it's Jose Berrios? All these guys are going to have to pitch at some point anyway. So I'm not necessarily going to put a number on it. I guess if I absolutely had to, say the playoffs were starting tomorrow. But again, there's a little bit of a different facet with that because you look at experience, you weigh a bunch of other things. So right now with Max Scherzer, it's kind of this wait and see game. I don't know why a lot of Toronto Blue Jays fans, it's kind of 50-50 that I've seen. Some people absolutely hating on the signing, saying he's going to get injured right away. I'm not one to prey on my own team's downfall, especially when they haven't even touched the baseball field yet. I'm going to be optimistic. I'm going to hopefully cling to that Max Scherzer that was kind of going through that 2019, 2020, 2021 stretch. Again, not exactly looking for the 2015 stretches like that where he was a Cy Young caliber pitcher. I just want him to be serviceable. I want him to give the Toronto Blue Jays a chance to win. If he has around like a low fours ERA, I'm honestly going to be pretty happy with that from Max Scherzer. But starting pitching and just pitching in general is such an important part of the game, as we've seen when you don't have a good bullpen, when you don't have a good starting rotation. If your starter gives up 5 runs in 3 innings, there's obviously so many negative factors to that. It's hard to come back in a game. You're taxing your bullpen. You might have to throw in another starter as this long relief role, which will probably be Yariel Rodriguez. It just doesn't work in the big picture in every single facet. If you don't have the offense necessarily that we've seen, not very enjoyable to watch, but it doesn't necessarily impact the rest of your team like not having a good starting rotation does. And Max Scherzer does go in to talk about this in some of his quotes as well. He says the backbone of any team is always the starting rotation. It doesn't matter how much offense you've got. If you don't have a strong starting staff, you're always going to be in trouble. And if you don't have the starters going out there and eating innings, or if you don't have the starters going out there and eating innings. On the Toronto Blue Jays, you've got staff here that can eat some innings with Kevin Gausman, Chris Bassitt, Jose Berrios, and now Bowden Francis coming up, seeing what he can do as well. And I completely agree. The starting rotation, especially early on in the season, because you don't want to tax those bullpen arms. You don't want to have to go to AAA and use up some of these guys' options. You kind of just want it to be a 5-guy rotation. You want them to, again, minimum 4 innings, keep your team in a baseball game, because that's going to lead to a lot of wins and a lot of success in the long run for your baseball team.
Yeah, and I don't know that starting pitching has been an issue for this ball club in the past few years. They have been very solid. And as much as I agree that pitching is the backbone to a team, you need good starting pitching. It's not also everything. This team obviously had to make additions in the offseason regarding bats, and they knew that. They knew that was the major point, and that's why you see a Max Scherzer 40-year-old signing instead of some, young gun heat thrower, whoever it may be. It wasn't their point of contention, but they needed to add somebody else to shore up this starting 5. And they've done that. They've done that. And that's why when I go look at this offseason as a whole, the Blue Jays have done everything I've asked for. They've brought in their power bat in Anthony Santander. They bring in a 5th whatever starter in Max Scherzer. Send a Yariel Rodriguez to the bullpen to help shore up that as well. All the moves in my head were calculated well from this front office and this organization. So Max Scherzer talking about shoring up the starting 5 is a must. It's a need. Every team needs to have a good, solid 5-man rotation. But in the same sense, it's not everything. The bats have to show up this year, and that's where I'll be tuned into. As important as it all is, that was our downfall last year. Is the starters can go out and throw you 7 scoreless, give up or 7 with 1 run, and lose you the ball game. And that was happening way too often with this ball club last year.
See, for me, the difference is, though, at least in that seventh inning part, you were still in the ball game. It didn't necessarily feel
Totally.
like it at a lot of times because you saw how bad the Toronto Blue Jays offense was at times. We have a starter that goes out there in the first 2 innings and they give up 5, 6 runs. You almost feel like the ball game's over right there.
Oh,
So
absolutely. And I'm not arguing that it's not a big component here, but I'm saying for this organization this year, it probably wasn't, hey, top of the mind to go and get the best possible starter because they know that they have a very secure 4, or at least 3, I would say. You're not sure how Bowden Francis is going to do coming off of last year. And that's why I think the Max Scherzer signing makes the most sense. Why would you go and pay somebody $30 million to come pitch for your ball club when you've already got 3 guys that are very solid and possibly a 4th in Bowden Francis?
yeah, like if you're looking at it in order of terms that like what the Toronto Blue Jays really needed going into this offseason, I think it had to be that power bat, obviously, at that number one. The bullpen needed to be addressed, obviously, especially when you let Jordan Romano go. You needed that Jeff Hoffman signing badly. And then after that, it probably is your Max Scherzer, because when you do look at it, say Max Scherzer did not sign with this baseball team, you're confident in what Kevin Gausman can do, obviously. You're confident in what Jose Berrios can do. Chris Bassitt, you're confident in as well. I don't know if you necessarily want him as your third starter. I think he's still going to have a very effective season. And then when you look at the other two, you have Yariel Rodriguez, who had some ups and downs, and then you have Bowden Francis, who, again, I'm very high on, had a very good end of the season. But you have one of these guys that isn't throwing well. You have one guy that isn't producing. Who are you relying on after this? Like, you have Jake Bloss, who did not look good in his starts last season, but did kind of get rushed through all the minor leagues. Was started in single A, went to double A, then got thrown into the MLB, then got traded to the Toronto Blue Jays. Obviously, we had him in triple A. Is that going to be a guy that you want to rush to the MLB? Not for me specifically. You have Adam Mako, who, again, could make some starts as well, but not a guy that I would want to rely on down the stretch, especially coming off injury. Then there's Erik Lauer, Adam Kloffenstein, another one. Obviously, I'm good with Alek Manoah when he comes back, but August is a long time away. You don't want to have this kind of 4-man rotation, maybe having a bullpen day every 5th day as well. Again, that's going to tax your bullpen, and it's not really going to lead to a lot of success. I've seen, especially with the Toronto Blue Jays bullpen last season, it wasn't going to help them out in the long run. So without this Max Scherzer signing, again, you have one injury. You have one guy that doesn't perform as expected, and you're in a whole world of trouble. Now you have Max Scherzer. If there is an injury, if there is an underperforming piece, you still have 5 guys that you can throw out there and be confident that they give you a chance to win day in and day out.
Yeah, that's exactly it, right? Because Yariel Rodriguez could absolutely come up and from the bullpen if there is an injury and give you some innings. There are guys that there's options now, I guess, is the big thing. When probably without Max Scherzer, this organization doesn't have a ton of options. I don't necessarily know. Talking about rushing guys, I don't think you want to rush somebody that is going through the developmental phase right now. You got some pitchers in the pipeline that look eventually that they could be very promising. Do you want to rush them into a season that you're hoping to make the playoffs in? I don't think so. So I think you got to sort of roll with this, and that's why the Max Scherzer signing, I think personally, and again, we've had discussions with you guys in the comment section. Some of you don't believe that it was a good signing. It's done everything that this signing has done everything that it's needed to. It gives you that little bit of leeway. So yeah, I 100% agree, Carter.
And the last thing that I want to get into before we do head to the third segment is a quote from Ross Atkins that I found a little bit interesting. I just want to hear your opinions on this one. So he goes in and talks about Yariel Rodriguez, and he says, Yariel will be stretched out and compete for the 5th spot. He'll remain depth for us, and we'll make a decision about halfway or 3/4 of the way through spring training to try to put our pieces in the best positions to be successful. So he's alluding that Yariel Rodriguez is going to be in contention for that 5th starter spot. How much validity are you taking that with? Or are you just kind of saying that Ross Atkins is throwing this out there just to kind of, keep maybe the fans on edge, maybe a little bit for Yariel Rodriguez as well? Where are you at with this quote?
Yeah, this is just for Yariel Rodriguez. You want to push him to be better, and you have to, and to be good, and to keep, keep working hard. But I think everyone and their dog knows that Yariel Rodriguez, this move was specifically to add extra depth to this bullpen in Yariel Rodriguez for him to be the long reliever. And I think it's a great decision. I don't think that you have to stretch him out as a starter. Maybe you want to still let him work through that as, if there is an injury, he has to come up. Or if a guy has a bad day, they can go to Yariel for 3-4 innings, right? So I think the play here is to say that, but also work him as a starter, because that is the situation this team might be put into coming so far down the season. So I think it is what it is. He can say that, but everybody knows that Yariel Rodriguez is the best fit to go to this bullpen. He was electric in the bullpen when it was last year, and when he was in the Japan League as well. Really good. So Yeah, I think it's all smoke and mirrors a little bit, Carter.
Well, yeah, you're not moving Kevin Gausman to the bullpen. You're not moving Jose Berrios, Chris
No.
Bassitt. You're not moving Max Scherzer to the bullpen. In theory, you could move Bowden Francis to the bullpen. Again, that all depends on the success of Bowden Francis. I'm a big Bowden Francis believer. Some of you might not be, but if Bowden Francis does struggle, maybe you do move him to that bullpen as that bullpen arm. Maybe you do have him as that long reliever. But what we saw from Bowden Francis in the second half of 2024, I don't know how you cannot be optimistic about this guy. His whip was under a 0.7, like just absolutely ridiculous stuff. Had one of the best ERAs in all of baseball. Was one of the best pitchers in all of baseball after the All-Star break. So that's a guy that I'm not starting in my bullpen after he did that for your baseball team in 2024. So the big candidate is Yariel Rodriguez, but at the same point, like you said, you don't want to have this guy just like firmly in the bullpen, and then in event of an injury, he's not stretched out and he's only going to be able to throw 1 or 2 innings. You want it to be closer to that like 3 or 4. Maybe again, if it's earlier on, maybe it's only 3 innings, but you want him to continue to stretch out if he does have to go into that 5th rotation spot. So I think, yeah, he's just kind of keeping his options open, going to see how players perform throughout spring training, and obviously he'll make his decision accordingly. But we have some franchise rankings to go over since the 2020s. The Toronto Blue Jays are a very up and down organization. We're going to see where they land on these franchise rankings coming up.
So I'm not gonna BS anybody here. The part 3 of this came out. So the franchise rankings were released in 3 parts. Didn't see the Toronto Blue Jays on the first one because that was 30-20 or 30-21. And I'm like, okay, I figured they wouldn't be in that one. And then I missed the second one, and the third one came out in the top 10. I didn't really give it a good look. I knew the Toronto Blue Jays weren't going to be a top 10 franchise in the 2020s. But I went back and looked at the second part that was released, and the Blue Jays finished 12th in franchise rankings among all MLB teams. And so just a couple things that they point out. In the 2020 specifically, the Toronto Blue Jays record is 378 and 330. So above 500. You like to see that. Winning percentage is 534, which is 10th in all of baseball. Losing seasons 1, playoff appearances 3, 2020, 2022, 2023. The highest WAR for a player, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. at 16.7. Pitcher WAR, Kevin Gausman, 13.6. Award winners, Robbie Ray, obviously won the Cy Young in 2021. Total money spent. Here's an interesting one, Carter. How much in the 2020s do you think that the Toronto Blue Jays have spent total? I will give you a hint. They are 10th in all of baseball.
And obviously, this is in millions. It might be
in millions. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not quite to billions. I'm going to say like 825 million.
That's a great guess. 814 million. Wow, that was a little crazy. So 12th in all of baseball. This is where they put them. And their reasonings were fine. It made sense. I'm not one to argue. I don't believe that the Toronto Blue Jays should have been a top 10 with no playoff wins. It'd be pretty tough to put them there. But again, I think this shows sometimes that as Toronto Blue Jays fans, we do overreact to a lot of things. And Carter, you mentioned this in the first segment. It goes back to the fact that I don't want to hate on my own team, especially going into a season, into 2025. I want to be optimistic. I think that, like I said, the offseason moves have been good. I think they've done everything I've asked of them. So why am I going to go into it thinking, oh, the Blue Jays are going to finish 4th in the AL East? And what's the point then? Why are we watching baseball? You want your team to succeed. So I am going into 2025 on a positive mindset, looking at this, looking at the moves they made, and hoping that the Toronto Blue Jays will have a great season.
See, and it'll be different once we get into the season, whether they're a good baseball team, a bad baseball team. We were obviously very critical of the Toronto Blue Jays in 2024 for good reason. That was horrific to watch. I did not have a lot of fun watching the 2024 Toronto Blue Jays, believe it or not. And if they go out and they have a stinky product on the field again, and they're not a very good baseball team, we're going to be right back to that critical state. Probably going to be on that fire off Atkins fence. How much more of a leash can you have with this guy? But now that we're in 2025, now they have made some moves. They have at least tried to make this ball club better. Again, why would you hate on a team that hasn't even touched the field yet in 2025? Why are you already going to destine them and make their fate just be a non-playoff team, 5th in the AL East, 4th in the AL East, whatever you want to say? At least have a little bit of optimism for your favorite baseball team. Like if Vladdy, again, it's a very direct path that could happen to make the Toronto Blue Jays a playoff team. If Vladdy has a Vladdy season, if Bichette returns, and the Santander has a good season, you have that starting rotation. If all of them perform as expected, they're going to be a pretty good starting rotation, probably around a top 10. I wouldn't say top 5, but in between a 5 and a 10 rotation, above league average, we'll say as a bare minimum. So, like, there's a lot of good things about the Toronto Blue Jays baseball team right now. A lot of players in contract years, a lot of established players. You have some players to be excited about as well. Will Wagner should make the team opening day. Joey Loperfido as well. I'm high on Elvis Martinez. Does he make the team opening day? That will be something that we'll have to see, obviously, in spring training. But before the team has even touched the field in 2025, I'm not going to say that they are going to be the worst baseball team to ever exist on this planet.
Yeah, why would you do that? I don't know. At the end of the day, we all love this team. If you're watching this podcast, you probably love this team. And so go into the season at least with an idea that this team could be good. Otherwise, I don't know what you're doing. Do you just want to watch to hate, like hate watch? I don't know. But that will not be me. I will go into the season and I will pray for good things with this Toronto Blue Jays team. And I hope you all do as well, because we have a lot of content coming for you guys over the next few weeks, months, whatever you want to say, as well. Back to 5 days a week, Carter. We are fully back. Locked on Blue Jays 5 days a week. You get us.
Cam Newton meme. We're back.
And we're back. One of these. Yeah. So welcome back. Season's coming quick. Pitchers and catchers report soon enough. We are going to have a lot to talk about and a lot to discuss. Can't wait for you guys to join us along the ride this season, 2025 Toronto Blue Jays. Hopefully everybody starts their weekend off on a good note. We did with this pod. It was a blast as always. We'll talk to all you guys tomorrow.